I'd like to call the instruction committee to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the March 17th minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, report out on professional development conferences, Innovative School and Title I.
Mr. Chair.
Field trips. Skip number 2. Any discussion on field trips first? Go ahead.
I do want to say that the Waypoint sleep out that was on our field trip, such an amazing thing. I know we talked about it at the last school board meeting, but it was interesting to go and talk to the kids and talk about how they're so invested in the homeless. So it's very excited to see that field trip.
Any other discussion? All right,
Shane, you have a question?
go ahead, Shane.
They see the, field day for Gonic. Are all the elementary schools gonna do that, or is it just, how does that work?
I don't know if all the schools are doing a field day. I think they have in the past.
Oh,
Yeah,
Clones
they
are
have.
too?
McClellan's here too.
Okay, sorry, I didn't miss that one. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was like
East
the
Rochester.
district-wide or just certain.
It would be the school, up to the
Okay.
school, yeah.
Alright,
And
Thank
then
you.
they, if I'm not mistaken, later on, they take the kids, certain kids from each school compete against each other towards the end of the
Citywide.
So, all right. Anything else? Okay, moving on. Conference updates. Looking forward to this.
Hi. Yes, Kathy Cotton and Meredith Tansey. We are here to talk about Innovative School Summit that 9 of us went to from March 30th to April 2nd, and it was focused on supporting social, emotional, and mental health needs. We had Future Pathways committee members and MTSS committee members attend. And I have a quick overview on the handout I gave you, some sample sessions that they offered. And I also gave a link to handouts if you wanted to look through them. There's some really great resources, and it aligns well with our focus on supporting students in learning loss and with our MTSS focus. You also have a letter that one of our high school teachers who's on Future Pathways, she wrote to overview how she would use her time and the resources she got at the conference. And we have Meredith Tansey here from elementary. She's one of our leaders of our MTSS committee, and she's going to talk about a little bit of her experience and some of the resources she brought. I just want to tell you, one of the things that I brought back, I focused on innovative teaching and leading, and I purchased the Joyful Teacher, and I went to several conferences with Barrett Gordon, and it's really bringing us back to basics on how to set up a classroom, how to work with students with the MTSS focus and back to academics, and really make a classroom joyful again. So I'm going to use this when I'm working with new teachers and in new teacher orientation. I think it's a really great resource.
Great.
Yeah, so just to piggyback, that was one of my favorite workshops too. The trainer there, it was about managing without class management, and really took me back to kind of the basics of just creating a class environment that is loving and caring and where we all kind of take care of each other. I got a lot out of the sessions about kind of some of our defiant and oppositional kiddos, and really what we're dealing with when we think about our kiddos is they're all at this point coming from some sort of trauma, whether it's as simple as COVID or beyond that now. So the majority of our classrooms, when we think about like just my students this year, they're all coming from a place that needs support. And so we have to really work that into just those curriculum, right? It's not just about the academics. And so we have always kind of focused on the first 6 weeks, but really I think that's kind of evolving now into more of a, it's gotta be a year-long procedure. And so one of the things that was kind of special was I was able to take some strategies and some points of focus back to my own staff. So the staff meeting that I came back to, I emailed my administrator and asked if I could have some time. I brought to them some takeaways that I thought could get us through the end of the year. The end of the year is another special little push, right? We have kids who are going to be going home for the summer, right, and not having the routine, and that can set off trauma or experiences, right? We have kids who are leaving school buildings, and that is a bunch of nerves. We have all the crazy end of the year activities that are so fun, but for kids who need that regulation and that consistency, that breaks down, right? So that's just another bear. So what was really special was to be able to just present some things that I learned to my staff. For example, we talked about just acknowledging before we respond to students. We talked about how natural it is for us to mirror our students' behaviors as educators. So when they're escalated, it's hard for us not to get escalated, and that takes a lot of practice. It's something that I've built over the last couple of years, and unless you're continually getting coached and practicing it, it's really difficult to do. So I think they were appreciative of that. We also took back some points to our Tier 2 coaches meeting for MTSS and Tier 3. So we were able to bring some strategies for some of those more defiant, oppositional, escalated children and kind of talk about our data and what makes sense and how to get through the end of the year by supporting them in a way that is effective for them. And so that was really nice as well.
I have to tell you, she's great at taking notes. She was the note taker for everyone. So, so really great resources, and I think it well supported everything that we're working on right now with both these groups.
So you got a relatively big group, that group, right? I think
We had 9 people. So we represented elementary, middle, and high. Justin Roy came from the high school. We had an elementary administrator, and then we had representatives from guidance and other areas. So,
Perfect.
yep.
Any questions?
Would you think that this would be something good that like 9 more people could go to next year? Is this like?
Absolutely. We're looking at how to build capacity around this, and something that's really great about presenting here and actually having people go, we require that we bring back the knowledge. And as Meredith noted, that was the first thing that was brought back to the MTSS 2 and 3. And that website that you saw before, those will be part of the resources that are added to it. So building capacity around that and seeing about next year. Yeah.
Great. Any other comments? Questions? Great. Thank you so much for bringing this back to us.
Thank you
Sounds
for
like
taking your
it's
time.
very worthwhile and
Oh, absolutely.
money well spent.
Yeah. You want to borrow my book?
I wrote it down. Can you
Okay,
tell me
it
who
is.
wrote it? Because it's
Yeah.
the Joyful Teacher.
It's Barrett Gordon. And she's a wonderful presenter, too.
Thank you. The book looks cool.
Right.
Title
Summer
I
learning?
is not here tonight, they couldn't be here, so we'll just keep that on the agenda for next month, and they'll come in May.
Okay. Next item is issues of the library.
What, summer learning?
Summer learning, okay. Sorry.
It's okay. Just a quick update.
I'm anxious to get through this.
I know you
so-
are. Quick update, we have 187 elementary K-4 students signed up. We have 42 fifth graders that are signed up to go over to the 6th grade, or to the middle school. 34 6th and 7th graders and 14 8th graders right now. We won't have numbers on the high school because that's competency, or credit recovery, so we won't know that until that grade's closed.
And this is a volunteer or I say volunteer base, but that's
Voluntary.
parent referrals and
Yes.
whatnot, that's not, our recommendation, or teacher's recommendation to the parent.
Some of them are recommendations, so it's out there for everyone, anyone can sign up, but there are some students that we really would like to come, and so the principals and the teachers will reach out to them directly. I know that's definitely the case at the middle school, we're still working on that, but yeah. Thank you, sorry.
Sure. Any questions? All right, now we get to the library.
Sure.
Did I miss anything?
No, it's easy.
All right, so I'm gonna hand out, just in case anyone didn't see it, there was a email to us early regarding, do you need a copy of it?
I do not.
Okay.
Thank you again.
The library chairperson reached out to us asking for consideration for budgetary issues, looking to get the board to use surplus funds or ESSER funds to help fund the library. Elementary libraries all across the district, and so on and so forth. She was asked to create a rationale, so this is what's attached. Do you all need a minute to read through it? I assume?
Nope,
No, I read it.
I read it.
Okay. Any discussion on it? Ready, Stokes?
Sandy, I have two questions. One, can we find $24,000 in the budget?
That is actually a question for Ms. Bartlett. She has a budget.
Okay. And then I guess my second question, Mr. Pappas, is I would assume that we would want to add something like this to the budget so that the library gets some sort of books every year. Do we know what she would be looking for as far as a budget every year for the library?
That would be a question that we need to refer back to her, I would assume, and we also, I don't know about anybody else, but it seems like it's just a number thrown out there. I don't see where this 24,000 is being spent. Like, how much does she want at the high school level, middle school level, elementary level, spread out through all elementary schools? So, I mean, I think it's very unusual, first of all, to, believe me, the last thing I'm against is spending money on books, so, on the library. I guess it's more process. I don't think this should be the norm of how we budget for libraries, so there is a process on how to budget. And as the department chair, district-wide department chair, I don't have a lot of experience on budgets, but I know that we don't deal with any other department this way. So hopefully next year, you know, if we decide to act on this next year, this needs to be done the proper way, not some special email to the board and whatnot, so.
Yeah, I can piggyback on what you just said. I agree with the process. So typically, library books fall under the school building budget. Principals ultimately are responsible for how they budget for their building. If this is looking to change that practice, then it needs to go through steps before now. Like, this is something that we could be working on for next year's budget cycle. We've concluded our current budget cycle. It just, if it's not gonna go through the individual building budgets, if that's no longer going to be the practice, then I think our business administrator needs to be working on this, and, you know, it needs to start there first. If it's gonna become its own budgeted district-wide item, we currently don't have that. So I just feel that it's a little late in our current budget season to be entertaining it and just having a $24,000 request without having an itemized, you know, what that looks like and, you know, how much for supplies, how much for the nonfiction books versus the fiction books. I just think we need more information. But again, it goes back to process for me, and this isn't the process.
No, I get that, but is there something we could do like this year to accommodate, maybe not do the 24,000, I mean, Dr. McDonald goes back, gets more info on what all this is going towards, and obviously Ms. Bartlett comes back and she explains where the money, how much money is available. It just, I don't think we should just close the door on it just because of a process. I think we need to dig in and look into it a little bit.
I don't think we necessarily need to shut the door completely on it, but I think, you know, I don't want to set a precedent that this is going to be
Correct.
something that happens every
No,
single year.
I agree.
I think my concern is in the original email that we received, kids do go down there, and COVID sounds like it was a huge thing because they were sending books to students and then the books aren't coming back. This is, from my understanding from the last email, something that is taught and it's part of a curriculum. So she's saying she needs those books. I think unfortunately, because of situation out of her control, she needs the book. So I guess my recommendation would be, I know she wasn't able to make it, she emailed us, maybe go through and say, what is your emergency books that you need and what would the cost be and what, so that she could bring that for next month, and then we would have a hard figure that we could vote on for potential either ESSER funds or a budget. I agree, I'd be curious to see where the breakdown of the 24,000 is, but I do think that she did kind of follow a policy. She did say that she met with like superintendent in November. She had another meeting with them. So I do feel like there is some kind of chain of command. I don't really know what the policy is for that, but I think because of COVID and she's now handling it for the whole district, which I think seems new, we have to look at what books we need for those, to get them in the hands of kids.
Mr. Fuller?
So what I'm thinking we should do is refer, Stupid?
Mr. Sturdivant.
This is why personnel I murdered everything.
I know.
We refer to work with Linda, since this looks to be a learning opportunity for her, since she's new in this, just like anyone. I'd create an itemized budget. I'd actually move this to finance, because I think that because ultimately Linda's gonna be like, well, do I have the money this year? Because this seems to be a one-time emergency fund or fulfillment to then learn for the 2024-2025 budget. Sorry, no, 2023-2024 budget for, is it district-wide or does she have to give allocation for each school? However that's worked out, I would leave it back to them, because policy-wise, they bring us forward the budget. So I would just say, she works with Linda, get an itemized budget, she learns the process, brings the finance, because then it can hit technically the main bulk board meeting, if you so choose, and not go to June. Because I think we like books.
That's what I was kind of
Yeah, I
thinking
just
in my
wanna
head as
move it.
far as scheduling.
I know what you're talking about, the same process, but I think we're trying to get it going.
Ms. Harrington?
And then-
Mr.
You know, if we can't get to that process quickly enough, and, or if it's recommended that be the process for next year, I would recommend she go back to the elementary school building principals, because they all have a supply budget item, budget line, and she work with the elementary principals to see what they can give her out of their supply line, their supply budget line.
Mr. Phelps, may I quickly?
Absolutely.
Ms. Sturdivant did come to the SAU office in the fall and was advised that the library line is through each school building, and advised to work with the building principal if there was a need. The building principals presented what they believed was a need, and that's in your regular budget. Ms. Bartlett also did reach out to building principals with, as far as the surplus money, and the building principals did not request any additional money. In addition, I would just say number 4, that is funded through the CKLA program, so I don't know why that's on here. But there is a process. She was advised of the process. She didn't get exactly what she wanted through the process, and so now she's going around the process. So I would like to just caution you that we do have a budgeting process. If you want to work with finance and make libraries a district-wide line, as opposed to a building line, I mean, that would be something that you would do through finance, but I don't think that's something that you would do through this committee.
I mean, we can certainly make a recommendation to finance if that's something you want to.
So would we make the recommendation to finance for the 24,000, or do we want to, just a recommendation?
Well, in light of some additional information, I think I would recommend that she goes, she has to work with the district on maybe what currently is budgeted, and if there's any surplus that would go to finance for review. But it seems like, based off of that information, the employee didn't know, was told the process, was not happy with the process, and came out to the board, it does appear to be going overstepping. So I'd refer it back to district for
But I-
review.
I guess
Of
my
the
question
finance
is,
if
if she followed if the process, and she went to Kyle, because she did have a conversation with Kyle, correct? She did go, because she did say, once she has that conversation with Kyle, if she is unsatisfied and still feels as though she needs something, her next chain of command would be, the next chain would come to the school board, because Kyle's right there. So if she went with Kyle and is unhappy with that, with the response, wouldn't the next step be us?
Go ahead, Ms. Harrington.
What my understanding was from Dr. McDonald is in November, she went directly to Kyle. Kyle told her, because this is a new position for her, so she hasn't gone through a budget season yet. He coached her then and said, the way that works is it's in the individual building budgets. You need to go meet with each principal in order to tell each principal what you want in the budget for library books. She didn't do that. She skipped that. So she didn't do that process.
Is that confirmed? She
Yeah.
did not talk to any principals in
She
any
did not.
schools.
She did not do what she was told as part of the process for her position, is to meet with those principals to get in their budget. Like, it's up to the library books for elementary schools fall under that individual building budget. She didn't do that, and now she's skipped Kyle and gone to us. She needs to go back to the principals.
Well, no, she did go back to Kyle, correct? Because in the email it
She
says
went
she
to
went
you.
back to Kyle.
She went to you, and then he met with her after I think she brought it to Mr. Downs, and then Kyle met with her after that and reminded her of what the process was. This would be no different than the math teachers coming and saying, we didn't get what we wanted from the principal in our math budget, and so we're gonna go directly to the board to ask for money. If that's how you want to operate, I mean, that's your purview. That's just what's happening here.
Go ahead, Mr. Young.
I don't think that's how we should operate, but if the library needs books or needs supplies and what's in the budget's not adequate enough, I think we still need to look into it, whether the process was followed or not.
Mr. Pappas?
Go ahead.
I think it sounds, I mean, she's been in the district for a long time. I think it sounds as though there might have been a misstep because she was confused with her new role. But I think the bigger concern is if the principals have already made their budget and she didn't realize that she had to go to them, and she's coming to us saying that there's no books, what is our role when we know that there's a need? I get the policy per se, but I think for me the bigger picture is, do we have books, and if not, how do we get them in there? So I think I understand that maybe she didn't understand the way the policy went, and I would assume it's just miscommunication, she just wasn't aware, but how do we get those books without setting a precedent?
Go ahead, Ms. Fuller.
So I would just refer this to, back to the district, and it can go to finance committee if they feel that there is anything that we should do this year due to the funding and her not following the procedure. And then it's a teaching moment, and through the future, it's handled either as the process is now or a recommendation from district on how we should budget in the future. And that's how it just, that way if it's a personnel item, it's handled by the district, and if it's procedural, it's handled by the district, and if there's any purchasing of books, then an itemized, because I think we all said we need a little more meat to the potatoes here, in order for finance. And if we're gonna do it, I wouldn't wanna wait till June, because if we have questions, now we're out of this year's possible surplus to fund it. That's why I would say, bring it to finance, they can hash out, because it's a spending item at the end of the day. So that's what I would refer it to.
So I'm gonna make a motion that this goes to finance.
Is there a second?
Well,
Well, we can discuss it
I'll
after.
second.
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. King?
No, I'm not about that motion.
Okay.
It's a separate.
Oh, sorry.
Would you like to speak to your motion, either of you speak to the motion?
I just think what Mr. Bolio, and I know you're not completely in agreement, but I think you're right. I think if this is gonna go, we have to have an itemized list, but it has to be an itemized list to go to finance. If it's a procedural thing and within that time, the schools can come up with a budget, then finance doesn't have to worry about the number. But if it's not a procedural thing, and it is something that the kids need to have books in the school for next year, finance needs to be aware of it so that they can put it in their budget. So that's the reason I made the motion.
I think I'll add that, I think by referring to finance or to the district and the finance, however, well, the motion's to send to finance. So if it does go there, at least it'll give Ms. Sturdivant too some time to come and answer the questions of that
Correct.
committee, and get some more detail. So,
Well, that's what I wanna make sure, if it's gonna go to finance, then we need more meat and potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ms. Boyer said, you can't just go off and say, yeah, here's $24,000. We kinda need an idea of what's needed. But I also think that if she's the one running all these libraries, she knows better than the building principals what's needed. So obviously these schools need something, so I think we need to do our due diligence and make sure we try to accommodate someone.
I'll add just before, Ms. Harrington, like, I want to know how much is going to, plan to go to Gonick, how much is going to East Rochester, how much is going to this school, that school. Different size schools, different libraries are in different situations. I want to know how much is planned to go to each school, what level books maybe, things like that.
I won't support it going to finance. I think it needs to go back to the district level, and they can come to us if they feel that it's a finance item.
What do you mean by district level?
It should go back to
The original process?
Kyle, yeah, it should be, it's a process issue. She can go to the building principal still, they still have the supply line.
So, what I was gonna say is I would rather refer to district. It can still go to finance, but the whole point is that way a review of the process, the teaching opportunity with the personnel item. At the same point is, then it does still give time for a full itemized list and then go to finance. So for me personally, where the motion is to go to finance directly, I'd be saying no to it. That's all.
Any other discussion?
I think it's been a district twice where I understand policy wasn't followed or procedure, but how often are policies and procedures not followed? They're broken all the time. We're talking about books for the kids that they need. It's just, why is it such a big deal to bring it to finance so they can discuss it and get more information? I understand what these, for the kids, for the students in the school, this is ridiculous.
I do want to say also that we're not just giving her 24,000 blanket to go to finance. I mean, she's got to come up with a list of books and prices to come to finance. I do think that, from my understanding, again, you know what I mean, it seems like there was miscommunication, but in the email that we did get, it sounds like she did go to Kyle twice. It is a new role. Maybe we need to look at having just a library budget. I'm not saying that doesn't need to be discussed, but again, I agree with Mr. Downs, getting those books or a list of the books that we might need would be beneficial for the students. And so looking at your procedures and all that, I mean, the kids didn't know what the procedure was, and to deny them those books just seems unworthy. So I'll be voting yes.
Dr. McDonald did point out that our new ELA curriculum, CKLA, already supplies the nonfiction books that align to that curriculum. So they're not getting the nonfiction books that are being requested. Some are purchased through the ELA curriculum.
Mrs. Goldman handles that line item.
Yeah.
Mrs. Grass?
I would be in favor of sending this off back to Kyle to say that I'm concerned about the books that went missing during COVID. I mean, we have obviously had, our libraries are not just updating books that you need to update every year because they're pretty disposable, but we have missing books. And it's pretty sad to send kids to the library every week to do their library class and not have enough for each of them to choose a book. I mean, that would be, or a book, if we've got books they've already read and there's no updating of missing materials. That's what concerns me, is that we've had a 2-year hiatus on regular library classes. We just gave books to kids.
The request that Mr. Rafusi made to Mrs. Judith when she came was, he used an example of the Captain Underpants series, because his son liked that, and he said, you know, that's what I would need to know, or that's what your building principal would need to know. You know, these books are ripped, these books are missing. He asked for specific information. She said, well, maybe I would ask for 8,000. He said, I would need to know what the 8,000 was for. And she said, well, maybe I couldn't really spend that much. Maybe I would only need 6,000. So he did request very specific information, even after the building, you know, the building principals did not request additional money. So he was very specific in what he was requesting. So I don't want this body to think that in any way that she was disregarded, because it was a teachable moment. He was very understanding. He tried to give specific examples, talk about how this body would not just authorize a blanket amount of money, like you said, that there would need to be a specific list of what items that you needed. So that did happen. You know, however you decide to move forward, I just want to make sure that you have all the information.
What can we do to get books?
Well, I think we need to
You know,
know.
can we-
I think we need to know what books we need.
Can we send a letter to her saying, we appreciate your quandary, but we operate on we need 6 cafeteria tables, we buy 6 cafeteria tables. What does each school need?
You drop it.
Good, Mr. McCary.
Nice
So-
juggling.
The district librarians will get together on May 11th to collaborate on the ordering of books and supplies, and all purchase orders will be completed and given to the district office by May 18th, so that books and supplies can be ordered. So, it doesn't even sound like they have a list yet.
We do not.
So, you know, not for nothing, but it's an open-ended purchase order that, you know, every teacher that doesn't have sufficient supplies for their classroom could be coming saying, I don't have sufficient supplies for my classroom. So, you know, it needs to go through the process, I guess, and they haven't even started collaborating on what they're trying to buy. So, it's just my 2 cents, I think.
Man, I hate the thought of denying a school library books, and that's the last thing I would certainly want. I'm a department chair. I know what my budgetary needs are, required to know what my budgetary needs are at the end of September for the following school year. So I have to plan so far ahead. They're just getting to it now. It's like, why are they getting together in May when it should have been done back September? Even if she's brand new, she's been a librarian for years. I know she was a classroom teacher, she moved in the library 10 years ago, so I'm guessing, I think that's about what it was. But still, and I respect her greatly, don't get me wrong. But May 11th is not necessarily the time to be discussing a budget. But if this is an emergency, I kind of hate to prevent purchase of books, but I need more information myself, but.
Well, on that, is there a way where we table this?
You have a motion on the table?
Well, I'm just asking a question, table this, we come back,
I think you'd want to
Dr.
take it to
McDonald.
finance.
comes back with more information for us. Like, get more information, so you, Mr. Commuter said they're going over there, what they need, what, May 11th, right?
Yep.
So, whenever our next meeting is, we're gonna have more, like,
I
So
wouldn't bring
wait.
it to this body because you can't make a motion on money, so if it's emergent, then it really should probably go
so
to finance.
I just think we need more information, it's the books for the kids. I don't think we should just forget about it and put it back into the district.
What is the date of the next finance committee meeting?
May 3rd?
May
No.
3rd.
No, sorry. May
So first
5th,
Thursday.
because the 12th is the board meeting, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So 7 days before.
May 5th.
So I think they need to move up their timetable drastically if they're gonna present, at least give us more targeted, like we're gonna spend this amount of money on this level, this amount of money on this level, and in this school, in this school, in this school. They need to, I think we need to encourage them to say, you can have your time to make your pitch, but it's gonna be on May 5th. and they've got to get their information put together by May 5th.
Is it the finance committee?
That's finance.
Yeah, which again, I agree. I mean, yeah.
Any other, go ahead.
Yeah, could someone give me what the process is, the policy process?
For typically budgeting, correct me if I'm wrong, budgeting is pretty much all hammered out by the district administrators in November. Like, every school submits their budget in the early fall, and it's hammered out over the course of several months, and then the budget is sort of put together in the last months of the school
So
year.
would she have had time to, if the schools had already submitted their budgets, would she have had time
Oh,
to
definitely.
do that?
If she's been the department chair, she's probably known she's the department chair, because I know she's new, but she's probably known since the beginning of the school year. Every school librarian knows their needs, I would imagine. They know what's in their library, they know what their needs are. So
And is that who she meets with? I mean, I'd like to understand what the process
Mr.
is.
Patrick.
Yeah. Who does she go to when she?
So with her position, it's a stipend position, so she's paid a stipend to do the additional duties of the director of elementary school libraries. So
Okay,
the process starting in
History
September.
would do, or Department of English would do,
But
same process?
Yeah, but department, like
Okay.
math department chair is only dealing with Spalding High School
Yeah.
math, right?
Okay.
But she's dealing with all elementary school
Okay,
libraries.
so
So
what does
starting
she
in-
do? What's her
So
first step?
starting in September or October, she would be meeting with all elementary school principals individually to say, this is what, and she'd meet with the librarian of that building as well to know what the needs of that library is. And she would go, this is what we need in our library. And then the school principal would include that in their budget for their school. And for example, had they known that, right, in the fall, and if they weren't able to include that then, we asked the finance committee, they approved up to $500,000 of our surplus to be spent this year. So building principals were approached and asked for a wish list, give us your wish list. So had she had those conversations with the building principals in the fall, that's something.
She not only meets with the individual librarians, she also then meets with the principal of each of those buildings?
If she wants to be included in their budget, yes, she should be meeting with those building
Okay, does
principals.
she understand it? Because it sounds,
Kyle told her that in November,
Kyle made it crystal clear,
and she didn't. So that's a process that should be followed next year unless it becomes a district-wide line item
then after
instead
the
of.
principals get it, what happens to that then? What happens to the budget then? I don't, where's it go then?
At some point, correct me if I'm wrong, at some point in the late fall, November-ish,
Yeah.
the building principals all meet together and bring their budgets with them and provide it
With
to
Mrs. Bartlett.
Mrs. Bartlett. She crunches the numbers and figures out, are we way over budget for the next year, or are we under budget, or are we just about right?
So is this like playing poker? You put in for each principal, are they fighting against each other, so to speak?
No,
I don't think so, I think it's a collaboration.
they bring their budget with their justification for what they need, and then it's all
And that
compiled
goes,
together.
that's to whom?
Mrs. Bartlett, the business administrator.
Same process that my school follows.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Mr. Down.
So we keep saying, yeah, she didn't follow the process, but we can't penalize the kids for this. This is for the students and the kids. We need to act on it. I don't think we can just sit back and just send it back to district. I think it's not hurting to bring it to finance, have them move that date up early for that finance committee and have everything in order. Like Mr. Pappas said, each school, this is what we need for this school. This is what we need for this school, this school, and this school. So this is for the students and the kids. It's not for, this is for their education.
This is
I would also assume, I mean, there's a few of us on here that are, not me, but there's a few of you that are in finance. I mean, you've had this conversation. If she doesn't have an itemized list, you know what I mean? I've been hoping, and I would acknowledge that the board members that are on the finance committee would know what the intent was for instruction to send it. if we don't send it to finance, it's not gonna get on the budget. If we do send it to finance, she does have the itemized list, there is a conversation that says this is the policy for next year, and we get the books in the hands of the student. Finance then has the obligation to say, you potentially didn't follow it, but they're gonna have more information than we have. So I think if we had an itemized list, this might be a different discussion, but I would assume that finance is gonna have the itemized list, they're gonna know what books are needed, why the books are needed, why the policy wasn't followed. There is gonna be communication in the way that the policy is followed next time, and they may decide to only give half the books that are required, or they may say some schools need it, or I think that's the discussion that I'm gonna assume finance is gonna be able to make that decision. So I think motioning it and moving it to finance, if we potentially wanna get it in the budget, would be the way to go, and let finance make that decision because they understand that we can't. Not saying finance will approve it or not, but I'm saying if we cut it now and we don't send it to finance, it's kind of dead for the next budget, correct, Mr. Boland? Oh, I thought you said if we move it to finance, it'll, like, by June, blah.
Well, I'm just trying to move her calendar, if there's any questions.
Right, so I mean, in that process, if we want it on the calendar, we move it to finance with the intent of the people that are on finance and also on this committee, they know it kind of went against our normal way of going, but the intent was to get the books into the kids' hands, but we need an itemized list. If none of that happens, or some of that doesn't happen, it doesn't get voted at finance.
And it didn't kind of get out of our normal procedure. It is out of our normal.
Well, I mean, I wasn't there, you know what I mean? I read the email, I'm going off the email. You know what I mean? Like, and again, Ms. McDonald's not Kyle, so we can't ask Kyle any clarifying questions. I'm saying it sounds like that because I wasn't privy to any of those conversations. So I'm not saying one is right or wrong. I'm saying with both parties not being here and you're hearing it either via email or secondhand, it sounds like there was some kind of miscommunication and we don't know because we weren't there. So I'm just saying, I'm hoping, I'm gonna take faith that the staff member just didn't follow the policy because for whatever reason there was miscommunication. That's the only reason I'm going with that way.
Okay, can we vote on this?
Yep.
Everyone ready? Motion is to send this issue to finance, and is the expectation to have it all itemized?
Moved up for that
Everything.
for that
Okay,
May.
and what happens if they don't do that?
Then I would assume finance would vote no.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's have a vote.
Are you gonna let her know that what she's gotta provide for that finance
Administration.
meeting?
Okay, all those in favor?
That was the next meeting, as Karen said, May 5th, correct?
May 5th.
Yeah, it has to, yeah,
All
to get
those
it
in-
onto the budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll vote aye. And opposed?
Nay.
Just one,
Is
two
it just
no's
two?
and three.
I said aye.
Okay,
So four.
so motion passes.
So just a point of clarification. So this is for surplus funds of this year's,
That's her recommendation.
is what her is her request,
Yeah.
right? So it has nothing to do with the budget that we submitted to the city.
Correct.
Correct, because that's a whole different
Right,
ballgame.
right. So
So they've
that's-
already submitted. it,
Right,
yeah.
so the request is for the surplus, whatever surplus from this year's.
Mr. Downs?
I just want to make sure that she's going to be instructed that she needs to have the itemized list, each school, what they need, broken right down, not just a number thrown at the board, this is what we need.
Okay.
And I would also say, when you mentioned, is this on this year's budget? We may not have any money. I
Right.
mean, we don't have Miss Bartlett, is that, here to say, she could say, we only have $5,000. She could say we have
Just the
zero.
way you phrased that, that's why I wanted to make sure that it's a
And that was
request.
another thing, we don't know what money is available. She mentioned ESSER funds, who knows if that's available? That's not up to our committee to decide. So if Miss Bartlett comes forward and says, we do have an extra 24,000, this, you know what I mean, like, instead of sending it back to the city, this might be a good case. Again, I think the discussion, and I'm assuming, I'm not trying to say, I'm assuming there's gonna be some kind of conversation to say, hey, listen, the way that this went might have not been the right way to go. Maybe reiterate it, because I'm assuming, you know, I'm gonna go into the assumption that we all wanna follow the right policy. So, you know what I mean? So I'm gonna assume that that conversation's gonna take place. But if Ms. Bartlett comes back and tells finance there's no money, finance isn't gonna vote.
All right, next item on the agenda is 5-year plan. Did our issue go, our list go before the 5-year committee?
That's next meeting.
Next meeting, right? Any questions on that? Anything, any public comment? Not seeing any public to comment. Anything under other?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The aye has it.